The Florida Gators have ruined my life and are not getting Lane Kiffin. So there we go. Also, for the people that I just got a comment, yeah, I do feel like a jackass. Let's talk about it on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free if it's the podcast and on YouTube. And sometimes things don't go your way, right? The Florida Gators did not land Lane Kiffin as many expected and anticipated. I see you all in the chat. I see you all in the chat. We'll get to whatever we get to. But I do think there are some more important things to talk about before we get to the chat. Okay, just gonna be honest, and you guys know that. All things South said, you feel like a jackass yet, and I'm glad you said it because I did say that in the intro. So let's talk about that, right? The Florida Gators did not land Lane Kiffin, despite okay. Also, I will say this. This is the last time I'm acknowledging the chat for a little bit. All things South said, tell Matt you're sorry. Here's the thing. I'll be completely honest. I did tell Matt that I'm sorry. I did privately. I don't need to do things publicly, right? Not everything's public. Still a human being, as are you, and so not everything needs to be done in public. But I did text Matt privately, and spoke to him privately. So there's that. I will say this. Yeah, it sucks. I do feel sorry for anybody that feels as though they were lied to by me or led astray by me. And this is just me, like, not even talking about covering Florida, not even talking about that. This is just me being just me being genuine with everybody, which I always try to be. Like, and I know like I'll talk trash to you, you'll talk trash to me. It's fine. It is what it is. The thing that I care more about or most about is just being honest. That's it. You know, I'm not saying things for clicks. I'm not running with things for clicks or anything. So I will say that this was, complete failure there. And so I will say that, yeah, I'd feel bad, and I do apologize if anybody felt as if they were led astray by me, or as if I lied to them. Because I will tell you that personally, I feel as though I was either lied to, led astray, or the people that I was speaking to who were very close to the situation didn't fully get a grasp on it. To the sense where, you know, even in yesterday and today, they still felt pretty good about it internally, which is what I was told, right? Which then leads things to saying, okay, they either didn't know, they were lying, or something changed, right? And that is what it is. And so, yeah, I feel sorry for anybody that feels as though I lied to them. I was wrong. I have no problem standing in the paint and being wrong. And saying that. And so I know the chat's coming to my defense here about this. And I appreciate everybody coming to my defense there with the LSU fans talking trash in the comments, in the chat and all that stuff. Like, I get it. I appreciate you coming to my defense, but like in when it comes down to it, like I thought something would happen. It didn't. And also I will say this, the thing that we spoke about this entire time was not that Lane was going to Florida, right? I believe Lane was going to Florida. I did. I have no problem saying that. Didn't guarantee it. We'll never guarantee something like that. This was always going to be, and again, we've spoken about this for weeks. This was always going to be Florida either gets to do the biggest I told you so, go F yourself that any school gets to do, right? Or Florida looks completely delusional. And I even while saying that, I said, like has happened so many times before, and we're right back here, right? the reports came out a couple hours ago at this point, which I wasn't home to do, but not yeah. But it came out a couple hours ago at this point that Florida was changing their approach and moving on from the Lane Kiffin pursuit after what they called inconsistent, communication. And that's not surprising that there was inconsistent communication, right? And so, yeah, that's not surprising that there's inconsistent communication. That's Lane Kiffin, right? He's an enigma for a reason. He's a lightning rod of media and attention. And that is what it is. And things changed. The reported reason, or not even reported, I don't know if anybody's reported it yet, but what I was told by 3 people was that Lane Kiffin didn't want to coach under Scott Strickland, didn't want to work under Scott Strickland. And that's not surprising to me, right? I don't know anybody that would want to coach under Scott Strickland, if we're just being honest. Like, that dude sucks. I've been saying it for years. He's a spineless loser. Thanks for the super chat saying Turnkey got Florida turned down. Yeah, that I'll put you up there. Sure, go ahead. You can be you can be up on the screen for a little bit. But with this whole situation, like, the thing that I don't get when people say, well, like when people tell me Lane didn't want to work under Scott Strickland, my first thought is that, well, Scott Strickland was always going to be here. Why did this drag out for a month, right? And what I can say about that is that, as far as why it dragged out for a month, is because Florida was being told, you got a chance. We're in this, we're moving these things along. We're being told that there's these big meetings happening, in Hammond, Louisiana. We're being told all those things. We're being told Florida has a chance. I don't know why that would happen if Scott Strickland was going to be here the entire time. Why this would be the hang up at this point. People talk about, well, Scott Strickland did this thing and that's what leads to it. And I don't necessarily believe that's the truth so much, but I do think that Scott Strickland played a part in not getting Lane Kiffin, but it was literally just Scott Strickland's just Scott Strickland's existence that did it, really. That's it. That's what Scott Strickland did. He just existed. And that's all he had to do. So for Florida not getting Lane Kiffin, that sucks, right? And again, like this whole time, and I'm only repeating this because we've had about 150 people join since then. Florida was under the impression that they were going to get Lane Kiffin for quite some time. Again, people even this week, and the issue that I have as far as why I was so not even adamant, because I was never adamant that Florida was hiring Lane Kiffin. I said I thought it would happen, but that I don't know what's going to happen with it. But Florida was pretty confident, right? And I will also say this: stop saying this is on Strickland. It's Stricklin. 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 Type it right. So if that loser ever searches his name, he knows exactly who people are talking about, and there's no potential miscommunication there. But so Florida really thought that they were going to get Lane Kiffin, and that's obviously not happening at this point. And I know that there's some people that are like, oh, well, what if this is the biggest, what if this is the biggest, like, smoke screen or rug pull that we're seeing? Maybe. And if so, I'll come out and apologize again for saying that they're not getting Lane Kiffin. But I don't believe that to be the case. I don't believe that to be the case with Scott Strickland at the helm. If Scott Strickland is the holdup, that's not changing, right? You're not firing an AD for a head coach. That is what it is. And for Florida, it sucks, right? This is target number 1. We were told Eli Drinkwitz was high up on Strickland's list, but that the fan base essentially revolted before anything happened. They pre-volted. The fan base pre-volted. And that just didn't happen. And so Eli Drinkwitz was off the list, and he's been extended. Earlier this week, a report came out that they were like, yeah, Florida's interviewed Clark Lee from Vanderbilt. Well, this morning he signed a contract extension, which I think a lot of people took as a good sign for Florida. LSU fired their AD over a coach. LSU fired their AD over a coach they hired and it didn't work out. Florida's not firing their AD to get the coach that they want. And so, that timeline is just really weird with things. But I think that when Clark Lee signed an extension, there were people that thought that's a good sign for Florida because that means Florida's not going after Clark Lee. When in actuality, Clark Lee's in the same boat as many guys that we've spoken about before, right? That he's at his alma mater. In fact, he's a double Commodore. He graduated twice from Vanderbilt. And so I think that it's really important to acknowledge that, Florida was just clearly out of the loop here. And that's happened far too many times here. I do think that this administration's awful. I've said that 1,000 times that I think Scott Strickland's a spineless loser and that he holds Florida back. That's always been a consistent thing that I've reported here. And it just sucks to be on the Scott Strickland side again. I know that there's people in the chat going, fire Scott Strickland, fire him, fire this. He should be. He should be fired, but he won't be. Said, but you said Lane Kiffin. I said I think Lane Kiffin will be here, right? I said that I thought Lane Kiffin would be hired here, but I want to make this part clear. Like, if you want to dunk on me for things, go ahead. That's totally fine. You're within your rights to do that. All I ask is that you appropriately dunk on me for the things that I did say. I never guaranteed Lane was coming here. I never said done deal. Never did any of that. I was always very open that I thought he would, but that I was not completely certain or that I didn't guarantee anything. I just want to if you're going to dunk on me for things I actually said, right? And dunk on me for things I got wrong. I see Jimbo's painting. I just got a notification for leaving a comment with a smiley face. Like, yeah, dude, like, you're right. Anybody that was right, like, I do implore you, if you were right, circle the wagon, spin the block, however you want to talk about it. Go ahead and do it. Because, like, I promise you, if Florida got Lane, I was gonna spin the block on people. I was gonna circle the wagons on people. Bunch of people here, we're gonna do the same thing, right? So, yeah, that's go ahead, more power to you. Like I said, like I do apologize for anybody that feels as though they were led astray by me. Because like that's what I care more about. I've always been very open about this. Like whenever I put a show out, whenever I'm going live right now, like I care about doing something that I can tie my name to and be proud about it. And unfortunately, we can't do that right now, right? Like I can't come out there and go, yeah, like I was proud of how everything went. Not that I think I necessarily did the wrong thing. Like anything I reported was something that I got verified from multiple people. I was very open the whole time. If I was talking to Florida, LSU, Ole Miss agents, like I was very open about everybody I was talking to. And so I feel like good about putting my name on all that, but I don't feel good about it ending up being inaccurate and being irrelevant. And yeah, I think that was what really bothered me about it. Is like I care more about my reputation with you guys than I do about actually being right or wrong. So I will, again, like if you feel bad, if you feel lied to, led astray, whatever it is, I apologize. Just know I feel a similar way. And that's not to excuse anything. That's just the fact of the situation. We'll get to the chat. We will talk about Jon Sumrall. We'll talk about Jedd Fisch. We'll talk about Brent Key. We'll talk about Jeff Brom. We'll talk about Lincoln Riley. Whoever you guys want to talk about, we'll talk about. I'm not giving this necessarily a set time for when this is going to end or how long we're going to go for. We're just going to go probably until my voice gives out at this point, but who knows how long that's going to be. But we'll get to all that when we get back with Locked On Gators. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift, right? And it's not a head coach that the whole fan base wanted. So that's out the question, right? But whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. And this week is the best time to jump in because their cyber sale is here and deals are huge. Save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com. Promo code COLLEGE, COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. And if you like making money on the NBA, college football, college basketball, in fact, let me check this real quick because on FanDuel, I do have stuff going for the Egg Bowl, and I also like a degenerate bet on the Iowa game. So there's that. The Iowa game, my bet is close to hitting. It's Iowa to have 100 passing yards, which is close. And Ole Miss, I need you to have another 35 passing yards in the second half. I think you're capable of doing that, and then my parlay will hit on that one. So I'll be very happy. And if Ole Miss, Mississippi State want to start scoring some more points, that'll also help me a lot there. So I appreciate that one. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. ICF making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. I just want to make this part really clear here because someone said, Moscona tried to tell you, but no, you insulted him and defamed him. Public apology is in order. Couple things. One, never insulted Matt Moscona, right? Never insulted Matt Moscona. I do not insult coworkers, and that's what Matt Moscona is, right? I did question things. I'm not lying about that. Not denying that. I did question things. Insult him? No. Defame him? No. I don't think you actually know what the word defame means, if that's what you're saying. Public apology is in order. Here's the thing. Just because someone is in media doesn't mean that they have to do everything publicly. Doesn't mean they owe you jack, you know what, publicly. I've hit up Moscona privately. Okay. I don't have to do a damn thing publicly for you or anyone else. Okay. Like let's get that out there. And just get that one out the way right now, right? And like I said, we'll look at the chat. We'll talk about the candidates that we've got here. And the reports were that Florida is likely or Florida is targeting Tulane's Jon Sumrall, Washington's Jedd Fisch, and Georgia Tech's Brent Key here. Here's the thing. I still with Brent Key, like I'm really, really skeptical with Brent Key. I am. I'm really skeptical on Brent Key just leaving Georgia Tech. That's it. I don't think that I have as many concerns as some other Florida Gators fans do with the Brent Key, you know, doing like how he's had Haynes King, how he's had Haynes King. And I think a lot of people fault him for that. Realistically, I disagree. I think that this offense being as good as it's been at Georgia Tech with Haynes King is actually a good thing. I don't think that I don't think Buster Faulkner would come with him to Florida if Brent Key were the hire there. And so I will say that. But this is, yeah, I don't think Brent Key's leaving Georgia Tech. I'll say that. Again, like I've been very open this whole time. I don't think that that's going to happen. That's not changing. And so there's that. What's up, Cousin Eddie? Been a long time since you've been here, man. So I will say that Brent Key, don't think he's coming. And if we go back to the very beginning of this, when we go back to the start of this whole process, it was tier 1, tier 2. Tier 1's off the table at this point, right? If Lane Kiffin's gone, tier 1's off the table. Marcus Freeman, Dan Lanning, Curt Cignetti were also in tier 1, but immediately Dan Lanning and Curt Cignetti were not actually, like, they were coaches that I said would be in tier 1, but not realistic. And so we know that Marcus Freeman not happening. A huge buyout, by the way, for Marcus Freeman. Eddie, when's the last time you were here, man? That's a question I'd like to ask for you. I haven't seen you in a while. And then tier 2 was broken up into two sections. It was tier 2W and tier 2A. Tier 2W was, it was a long-ish list, but Brent Key was in that list, right? 1 games, offensive line guy that doesn't get out physicaled, which is like to not get out physicaled in the SEC is fun there. But Georgia Tech's alma mater, needs to finish strong. They had a really bad loss against Pitt. And good coordinator hire so far, but you got to sustain that. Jedd Fisch is another name, of course, Florida alum. I'll be honest with Jedd Fisch. One of the things I have not liked when people suggest Jedd Fisch is that when people bring him up and they talk about him, they always go, he went to Florida. That's the big selling point. And I hate that. I feel like you should probably have a better selling point other than he went there. That's honestly, that's been my main issue. It's just that's the main selling point, is that people go, he went to Florida. That makes him a good candidate. And that's not true. Like, yes, he went to Florida. That's not what makes him a good candidate. I have more concern with Jedd Fisch as far as talking about what he would be long-term, because no one knows the answer to that question, right? No one knows the answer to what Jedd Fisch can do long-term at a school, right? And yeah, I see people saying that he's below 500 in his career. I get it. I don't necessarily care about that as much because, and I'm not saying that I don't care about wins or losses, but I am saying that I don't care about it as much because context matters. And it does matter if you're playing for, or if you're coaching a garbage program, right? Like when Jedd Fisch got to Arizona, they went 1-11 in his first year at Arizona. Okay. 1-11. That means outside of that 1 year at Arizona, he's what, 30-21? Jedd Fisch is the head coach at Washington. And so outside of that 1 year, he's been pretty damn good. Again, 1-11 in his first year at Arizona. They were awful. It was coming off the COVID season, and then he left. One of my things that I keep coming back to with Jedd Fisch is he has never stayed anywhere. He hasn't. You look at what Jedd Fisch has done in his career. He's been coaching since 1997. He's never been in a place longer than 3 years. Okay. Yes, it's beating Georgia last year. That's the signature win. So that's where I get really hung up with Jedd Fisch. Is that I think he's a good offensive mind. I think he's a good coach. Just something about the main selling point being that he went to Florida bothers me, because that shouldn't be the main selling point for a coach. I think Jedd Fisch has a better resume when you talk about the wins, when you, again, just remove the first year at Arizona and he's got a good record, which I know you could just go, oh, remove the bad things and guys are good. Who would have thought? I'm asking you to remove 1 year for a guy that's been a head coach for what, 5? And so that's what I'm saying there. Remove the first year that he was ever a head coach at Arizona, which was really bad, and look at what he's done since then. Resume since then is really good. I think he's a good offensive mind. I don't know what his staff would look like at Florida. I don't know if he's capable of building an SEC staff. And I think that that's very important, honestly, like whether you're a good offensive coach, defensive coach, I think it's important to be able to build a staff. I don't know if Jedd can do that. Would he keep some of the guys from Washington that, Vinny Cincinnati, Robert Bala, would he keep those guys? Who knows? I just saw a question I wanted to acknowledge. Sorry, let me just find it in the chat real quick. Should have, there we go. It wasn't a question. It was, should have went after Eric Morris. No, I disagree. I don't think Florida should have gone after Eric Morris. And this is a conversation, again, that we had way early. I think the week Billy Napier was fired, we spoke about Eric Morris. And I think he'll do great at Oklahoma State. I think his offense is built for Big 12. I think that he's a good coach. I do. He's improved year over year as a head coach. Fun air raid style that Florida athletes would probably thrive in. but I think that SEC defenses will be able to figure out sooner and quicker and shut down. And also, I think that he's got a lot of ties to the state of Texas. And I think at Oklahoma, there's a lot of guys that'll go like that. But I think that at Florida, I don't know how that'll really translate with getting them over there. Brandon said Kiffin was 100% at Florida. I never in my life said that. Don't know who you are, but never in my life said that. And I've been very open about that. I'm not saying I've been very open about, I'm not saying he's going to Florida. I thought he would go to Florida. And my main point was always people saying that Florida was done. That was always it. That's it. And so I'll say that. So there's that. And we spoke about Sumrall. We spoke about, or actually, we haven't spoken about Sumrall. Jon Sumrall was the one group of 5 coach on my tier 2W. Okay. Everyone's told y'all like they knew STFU and GTFOH, please and thanks. Mac, that was always the thing, right? Our thing was always here talking about Cody Alexander, you get me fired by going to ask your mother how to get that done, and then she'll tell me about it later on. Thank you. And so whatever we just passed. Oh yeah, everybody's saying that they knew. That was always a thing, right? And I said that for weeks, was that one side is going to end up being right, and they're going to say they were right the entire time. So there's that. I will also say that for Jon Sumrall, he was the exception to this because Tier 2W is for Power 4 winners in Tier 2, short-term or long-term winners, because I did think it mattered. And I will say that Jon Sumrall was the exception there. He was the exception to the P4 winner rule. Dude's won everywhere he's gone. He's been successful. I don't think he'd be a wow hire. I think that's important. Just to acknowledge that he's not going to be a wow hire. A lot of people aren't going to be stoked about it. I will say this. I think he's a really good football coach. I do. I think he's a really good football coach. I don't know how he would translate to the SEC. He had 2 great years at Troy, and he's had 2 great years at Tulane so far. Or we could say last year was a really good year. This year's a great year. So I would say that. Did you feel the same way about Napier like Sumrall? No. I think Sumrall's. With Napier, I was excited because of the recruiting prowess and or at least the proposed recruiting prowess. And there was that. With Sumrall, I care more because I think he's a genuinely great on-field coach. I would be very not concerned. I'd be very interested to see what his recruiting would be like. But I thought Napier would be a great CEO type under the expectation that he would hire an OC, which he never did. And Sumrall, I think, is a great on-field coach. I'd be really interested to see what the roster building process would be like there. I'd be interested to see who he'd be able to retain. But most importantly, Jon Sumrall, his success will be strictly determined by what his offensive coaching staff looks like. Okay, that's it. His success would be determined strictly by what his offensive coaching staff looks like. Because I do think that he's a great defensive mind. I think that he's got like some SEC experience, but never as a head coach or coordinator. So I don't think that, or 1 year as a coordinator. So I don't think that matters. But I would be really interested to know what his offensive coaching staff would look like. And we've had this conversation before where with defensive minded guys, your offensive coaching staff will determine your success. It will. Like your offensive coaching staff will determine how good you are. Look at the Muschamp days, right? You can have a fantastic defense, but if you have an awful offense, it's harder to win football games. Like if you have an elite offense and a bad defense, you're going to win considerably more football games than if you have an elite defense and a bad offense. Okay, that's what it is. And you can argue that all you want. You're wrong there. That's just what it is. Like look at the, again, Muschamp days and Mullen days even. Mullen, elite offense, garbage defense, made it to the SEC championship. Muschamp, had some great success, but back in the day when teams were running the football more, this is now you need to be better. Like the teams that, like even Iowa, their whole shtick was, hey, we're going to be amazing on defense, probably pretty bad on offense. And even now they're like, all right, we need to figure out something on offense. But I think that when we talk about Jon Sumrall and what that staff would look like if he came here, I think that he would need to make some pretty significant changes to the staff, because one of the things that Napier did wrong was, well, he did this awful thing of bringing over a bunch of guys from his Louisiana staff, right? Which I understand the thought process. I do. Also, please stop saying Sunbelt Sumrall. He coaches in the American Conference. It's in the AAC. So I will say that one thing Napier did awful was bring over the staff from Louisiana. Sumrall can't do that. Like if you want to bring the DC, that's fine. If you want to bring Greg, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Gasparito, I guess. If you want to bring him, go ahead. He's been Sumrall's, right-hand guy on defense. Been with him at Troy and Tulane, and so he's been there. I think that's fine, but offensively there needs to be a lot of changes there. I don't think that you can go bring Joe Craddock over, who again was at Troy and Tulane, but it's different when you go, hey, well, the head coach is the guy that's really important for having on the defense, and bringing his DC that knows how to run the defense, knows how to implement things. That's sure, because the head coach, Jon Sumrall, is the system. Offensively, you're reliant on who your OC is. And so I think that's important there. And so Joe Craddock, I don't know. Will Hall, I was surprised that Will Hall ever went back to Tulane this year. He's a passing game coordinator. He was the OC for a couple of years, then went to Southern Miss to be the head coach. Going to need to go up from there, right? And like most of this staff, you're going to need to upgrade from, which is concerning. And we can look at like who Jon Sumrall has been on staff with before, and who he's been on staff with in the past. Like he was at Ole Miss in 2018, which, to be fair, has been a little bit of a while, right? But they were still a team that, well, again, that obviously was not the Kiffin times. That was a Matt Luke days with Phil Longo as the head coach, as the OC, and Phil Longo is now currently the head coach at Sam Houston State, and they're awful. So maybe there's a shift from there. I look at this and I just go like, this is probably not going to be ideal for anything involving Florida now, right? Yeah, yep, great. Some of the comments are funny, right? I'm not gonna read them, but I'll acknowledge that some of them are funny. They're doing a good job there. But for Florida, like none of the, because I think this is the important part, none of the names that we talk about are going to excite the fan base the way that Lane Kiffin would have. And that sucks. Like that's the unfortunate reality of the situation, but none of the names are going to excite the fan base the way that Lane Kiffin would have. And that's awful, right? Like that's like we could just be honest about it. That's an awful situation to be in. And I hate it and it sucks, but that's also the reality of the situation. That for Florida, like we could talk about, Kenny Dillingham's a name that people brought up a lot. I don't think Kenny Dillingham leaves Arizona State. I don't know if Kenny Dillingham would be as successful at another school. I think he's a fantastic football coach. I really do. But he's at his alma mater. Big 12 championship, made the college football playoff last year. I think one of the biggest things for Kenny Dillingham is that I was reading the name. For Kenny Dillingham is that he's at Arizona State, and his big selling point is like the passion that he has for the program, right? And I think saying that, that he would replicate that success is maybe a little bit premature. Just because like you can't replicate that passion. Like that's the big stuff. Like Kenny Dillingham, like he cries in like post-game pressers sometimes, or post-game like interviews. And that matters. He's not going to cry real tears for Florida. Like he's going to do that for Arizona State because that's his alma mater. Who was it? Sorry. Someone said something stupid. Jon Gruden is a better coach than all the coaches, is better than all the coaches you're going to mention. Nope. I'm good. Jon Gruden had one good year as a head coach with Tampa. And it wasn't with most of the players, like most of the roster were not players that he brought over. One good year, won the Super Bowl. Sure. Outside of that Super Bowl year, he's a career 500 coach. I'm good. I am. Add that into the fact that he's a piece of trash. There it is. You said that Matt Moscona, an ESPN employee, didn't know what he was talking about. Never in my life said that. Just want to make that absolutely clear. Never in my life said that about Matt Moscona. Just throwing that out there. What I questioned with Matt, and I will say this, what I questioned with Matt was him saying that a Florida source said that Florida had moved on. And that what I said was, why would a Florida source tell the LSU guy that and none of the Florida guys that? And so that either means that Florida is being played, lied to, or that Florida media is being played and lied to. That's what I said about what Matt said. And so there's that. Yeah, appreciate you coming in here to dunk on me, say whatever it is you got to say. Not running from the smoke, like, again, because if I was right, I'd be coming after you, right? And so that is what it is. And so I will say that. As far as I saw someone say Jeff Brom, I think Jeff Brom's a great coach. The fact that he wasn't mentioned, yes, I'm going to get to Kalani Sitake. The fact that Jeff Brom wasn't mentioned, interesting, because just a few weeks ago, it was, Jeff Brom would be interested in hearing what Florida says, and now he's not interested there, or he's not listed there. No clue if he's interested or if Florida's not interested. Wins football games, had a rough, month, or rough, we'll say couple weeks, right? Good offensive mind, but again, he's at his alma mater. And for a lot of these guys, like I mentioned the alma mater, and people can mention this with Jedd Fisch as well. For a lot of guys, to find success at your alma mater is really important. More so if your alma mater is a place you played at, which Jedd Fisch, of course, didn't. But I think that it's more important with guys that played at their schools that you want to see wins there, right? Can someone, like, why do people keep talking about Gruden? What has he done in the past 20 years? Like, yes, sure, you want to say he's a Super Bowl winning coach, that's fine. What has he done since then? What has he done since winning the Super Bowl 20-something years ago, or 20-ish years ago? Just something. For people, for some reason, a bunch of people are mentioning Kalani Sitake right now. And Kalani Sitake is the head coach at BYU. I think that's a great spot for him. I think that if you look at the record and all that, he looks amazing, right? 11 wins last year. They've got 10 right now. I think they'll get to 11 this year. So you look at that and say Kalani Sitake's amazing, right? And his record in the Power Four, because for much of his time at BYU, they've been an independent, right? And one of the reasons that they joined a conference was to be more competitive and get there. Look at what he's done in the Big 12. Still a great record, right? He's 26-10 in the Big 12 in these 3 years, including 7 losses their first year in the Big 12. And this year they're doing it after losing their starting quarterback, Jake Retzlaff, kind of like, I forgot when it was, but during the summer. Here's the thing. I think Kalani Sitake is a great coach for BYU, which, by the way, also BYU, his alma mater. Just want to throw that out there as well. BYU, Kalani Sitake's alma mater. While we're talking about alma maters, it's that. I think that Kalani Sitake is an awesome coach for BYU. I think he does a great job there. I think having the Polynesian ties helps because a lot of Polynesian players go to BYU and Utah and stay on that West Coast. And I think that's important. He is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which, again, I do think matters if you are Mormon and you're going to Florida, where it is different religions than that. And I think that matters when you're going to relate to these kids and recruit these kids. But also, I think that Kalani Sitake loves being at BYU. Again, it's his alma mater. I think he loves being there. I think he's going to continue to love being there. I do. I think he's going to stay there. I think he's going to be really successful there. What's his ceiling? I don't know. Someone said that he's a Florida guy. He's not a Florida guy. I don't know where that came from. But he is from Tonga, Hawaii, and Missouri. So not a Florida guy. So there's that. You think if Fisch beats Oregon, that would change some perceptions on the hire? Thank you, Kenneth Brown, by the way, for the super chat. Yeah, of course. I think that if Washington's able to beat Oregon, then that's going to change a lot of people's opinions. Partially because a lot of people's opinions change based on factors that don't really matter at times. Like I've spoken about this with Lane Kiffin, right? When Florida played Ole Miss was up 3 very late in the game, 4th and goal, and they went for it and didn't convert. And a bunch of Florida fans came out and went, he kept Florida in the game too much. I'm good on Kiffin. Like, let's move on. It's like, well, that's who Lane is, right? And also that was the right decision to make, because the next week when NC State was up 3 against Florida State, 4th and goal from the 6th, I think it was, they went for it and they got it. And everybody went, oh, what a great decision for NC State. That was such an awesome move. It's the same exact thought process. You're just changing your opinion based on the result. That's not how football works. That's always what I've talked about with football, is that football is so many of the decisions made and so many of the decisions for football coaches are made based off the process of them, right? Is this the right thing to do, the smart thing to do? Is this the best chance to win? All that. But you're going to be judged based on what the result is. You go for it on 4th and short, and you throw the football and it's a drop, they're going to crush you for the drop. They're going to say, stupid, why throw the football? Why risk a drop? Run the football. Like, they're going to do that. Like, that's how it's going to go. If it's a conversion, they love it. If it's not, they hate it. They don't actually care about the process. What about Lincoln Riley? I don't know about Lincoln Riley. I really don't. Like, first off, I'm not a Lincoln Riley guy. I could get behind him. I could sell myself on him, as I can for a lot of these guys. But I don't know. Lincoln Riley, a lot of his issues are self-inflicted. That was my same issue with James Franklin. My same issue with James Franklin was that I think a lot of his issues were self-inflicted and they're different reasons, right? Sorry, just real quick. Alex Golesh did not take another job. That was reported by one person and then never confirmed. And in fact, people came out and said that Alex Golesh's camp might actually be pretty pissed that came out when it came out. So don't do that. I will say that about Alex Golesh. For Lincoln Riley that we were talking about, James Franklin had issues that were quarterback development, wide receiver development. Like they would always get like a quarterback that is going to be this big NFL draft name, right? And then they never really develop. With receivers, they always get these big athletes and they go, oh man, if you ever get them going, they're going to be really good. And then they don't do that. And then they go to the league and they're better in the league than they are in college. Offense has been an issue for that team. Like, he brought in Andy Kotelnicki, which this is one of the most damning things about James Franklin for me. He brought in Andy Kotelnicki, a fantastic offensive coordinator, one of the best in the country, one of the most creative offensive coordinators in the country. Then he made him change everything, and he made it way more dull. I hate it. I hate that. Don't hire a creative offensive coordinator and then tell him, hey, that creative thing you did, don't do it anymore. Then don't hire him. Hire Billy Napier as your OC if you just want to run inside zone a bit. Just do that. So that was my issue with James Franklin before. And I mentioned James Franklin to mention that I have issues with coaches where you may seem really great, but your flaws are all self-inflicted. Okay. And for me, I think of that with Lincoln Riley as well, because I think of Lincoln Riley and everybody talks about, oh, just get him a great defensive coordinator. Just get him a good DC. I think Lincoln Riley right now has a very good defensive staff. Okay. I think for much of his career, he didn't. Okay. I think that when you talk about Alex Grinch, if you know the name Alex Grinch, you probably don't like him, or you might be a UCF fan because he's the UCF DC right now. But Alex Grinch was the Oklahoma defensive coordinator from 2019 to 2021. And then Lincoln Riley left to USC, and Alex Grinch went to be his DC for 2 years in 2022 and 2023. Lincoln Riley tied his name to Alex Grinch for 6 seasons, and their defense was awful the entire time. Terrible. Like they were awful. They got better than they were before he got there. Yes, but they were awful the whole time. And then he got fired at USC, and now at USC, they've got, I think a really good defensive staff. I really do. You've got D'Anton Lynn as your defensive coordinator. D'Anton Lynn, great reputation, great resume, very well-renowned, well-regarded defensive coordinator. You had Eric Henderson there, who Eric Henderson played in the NFL for a little bit, has been coaching for a long time, and is the co-DC. And I think that he does a good job. He's also a defensive line coach in the NFL, which is important to just have like being a position coach in the NFL. Great. And so I think that you've got that good defensive coach, that good defensive staff there. And one of the more, or two, I guess we'll say, two of the more important defensive coaching hires that they've got at USC right now. They've got Rob Ryan, which Rob Ryan, one of the best defensive minds. He's a weird dude, right? Not taking that away from him. Weird dude, but hell of a defensive mind. And Doug Belk is a secondary coach. Doug Belk is someone that I think when Billy Napier got hired, I know I spoke about him and I said, hey, go get Doug Belk as your DC. Doug Belk's right now the secondary coach at USC. Great defensive mind. Okay. So, yeah, I think you've got a great defensive staff, and yet you're not winning enough games. They're not. Like, they're having a good year, right? 8-3, but you hired Lincoln Riley to be a national championship winning coach. Okay. Like, that's you hired him to do at USC, and you gave him the resources. They've had fantastic recruiting classes. They've got the number one class in the country right now. Will it stick? Who knows? But they have the number one class in the country right now. They've done it. Like, I think Lincoln Riley, all of his flaws that have happened have been because of him. I think that's important. So there's that with Lincoln Riley. There was another name I saw someone mentioned a little while ago. For everybody mentioning Alex Golesh, like, I think he's a great coach. I think I've said before, if you're going the G5 route, he would probably be the guy that I would go. Unproven long-term, absolute psycho. I think people would love that at Florida. Absolute psycho, high-octane offense. I would mostly just question how that offense would evolve. From what I've been told, though, he was a big part of Tennessee's offense evolving. Yeah, fire Brandon Olsen. Do it. Fire him. Fire him, Doug. And so Alex Golesh, I think, is going to be a great coach. If he's the coach at Arkansas, I think that that's a great hire for Arkansas. I really do. Yeah, I think Alex Golesh is a great coach. I think he's going to be really successful for a really long time. I think that that's important. But yeah, there's that. But the Florida Gators are looking for a new head coach. And sorry, I just got a text that, yeah. Is that you think recruits and current players have heard anything, and that's why they are staying as of right now? I don't know. So I've had this theory, we'll say, with recruits, in the sense that teams are, because now teams can use revenue sharing, which is the school will pay you directly. School will pay you directly, and it's, like it doesn't have to be public, none of that. And that, like with NIL now, there's like an NIL clearinghouse where you have to get that money approved financially, how much money you're giving players and all that. My theory is that schools are giving revenue sharing money to recruits. Again, theory. My theory is that schools are giving revenue sharing money to recruits that locks them in. And so it doesn't matter who the coach is. That's my theory. Did you just get a bombshell text message and not share it? No. For the people that must know and want to know, like I said, I reached out to Matt Moscona right before recording this, and that it was just him responding. And so there's that. That's it. It was just that. All good there. But for Florida, like we're going down this list of names here that we got, and D-HUD, I don't know the answer. My assumption or my thought is that it's like 2-year contracts and then renegotiate. Maybe 1 year and then renegotiate, whatever that may be. Someone mentioned Brian Hartline before, and look, I think that there's a good, I don't know. I think that there's some allure with Brian Hartline. I do. He's going to have no problem recruiting skill position players and quarterbacks, offensively he's going to be recruited. Defensively, he would need to get that DC hire right, but he would also need to get the OC hire right because, well, I think that it's very important to acknowledge he's not this experienced offensive play caller, but also he's not a guy that like has his own system developed. He's not known for that. He's not known as someone that's run their offense, right? Like Alex Golesh's offense is different from Josh Heupel's offense, even though they're both Bryles spread, but they're different variations of the Bryles spread. And I don't think Brian Hartline really has an offensive identity, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Right? It's a good thing because that doesn't keep you bottled up with who you're going to hire as an offensive coordinator, right? Last year or 2 years ago, we were talking about Billy Napier should go hire Brennan Marion. And my biggest reason for concern with hiring Brennan Marion was that Brennan Marion's offense is so starkly different from what Billy Napier did that's a big risk for Brennan Marion to have to deal with, especially with the coach on the hot seat. And that it's a big risk for the offense to have to learn it. I'll read that in a second in the chat. So that was my big concern there. If you have, Brian Hartline without an offensive system established, that's a good thing in the sense that you can hire any OC that'll work for you. But it's a bad thing in the sense that you don't have that continuity then. It's going to be you hire this OC, and if it works, he's going to get hired as a head coach in 2 years. And then it's going to be you hoping that your QB coach can be below him and learning that offense, which is probably going to be QB coach, right? Some JJP said, slept in today and woke up to the news I've been wanting out of Florida out on Kiffin. Just not a fan of his. Give me Sumrall, please. He's a smart hire. There we go. Thank you for the super chat there. Let's see. Q said, what options for OC and DC do you think UF should look into? I think that a lot of it depends on who your head coach hire is, because I think that you need to have that complementary style. If it's, let's say, Sumrall, for example, I will again go back and say, Jake Peetz would be the guy that I want. Jake Peetz is a name that I don't think anybody ever really talks about. It's Peetz, Peetz. I don't think anybody ever really talks about him. But I've been very open that I'm a huge fan of him. I'm a big fan of what he does. He's got a great resume when you think about it. He's currently the passing game coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks, which incredible offense when it comes to just feeding Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? He's got the past 2 years prior to going to the Seattle Seahawks, spent 2 years under Sean McVay with the LA Rams. He was on that 2014 Washington Commander staff that Jay Gruden was the head coach. Sean McVay was the OC. So he was part of that insane stretch that they had at Washington. And so he was part of that. He was the LSU offensive coordinator when Tyrion Davis Price ran for like 1,000 yards in Florida. And so I think that Jake Peetz has a great resume. I think that he's done awesome. People that I've spoken to in the coaching world seem to really like him. He's got SEC play calling coordinator experience. And so I look at him as saying, like, if you get Sumrall, I want you to go for Jake Peetz. I think realistically, you might look at them for having someone, or you might look at them to go for someone with more, we'll say, ties to Florida, like a Cade Bell type. I think that would be someone that would look at. SEC group chat's having a good time right now. Just want to throw that out there. I'm not, but the SEC group chat is having a good time. And so there's that. Any love for Steve Spurrier Jr. as a head coach? No. As an offensive coordinator? No. He's incredibly unproven. I'm good on it. So there's that. Brian Hartline's a huge gamble. I agree. I do. I think Brian Hartline would be a big gamble. I don't think he's nearly as close to a sure thing as possible. But here's the thing also. Whoever Florida hires, including Lane Kiffin, right? Like you can go back to the beginning of this whole process. We're going to wrap up here because we've been live for an hour. And so we're going to wrap up here shortly. But including Lane Kiffin, there is no coaching hire that's a slam dunk, that's a home run, none of that. Okay? It's it. There's no coaching hire that is a slam dunk sure thing. That's just not something that really is in college football right now anymore. There's so much volatility right now in college football, partially due to the transfer portal, partially due to just things going crazy. And I think that is important. Hold on. Sorry. Someone said, you said Lane is coming to Florida. If I said, what I said on Locked On SEC squad yesterday was, I thought pretty jokingly. If you look at my face when I say it, it's pretty clear that I was being tongue in cheek about it. Not that I thought he wasn't coming to Florida, but as far as the certainty behind it was a joke. And so there's that. But like I was saying, like there's no head coach that's a sure thing. It just doesn't exist right now. And that's just what college football is right now. And it's what, frankly, football fans need to just learn to live with. And so I think that for Florida, like you're going to get a hire that the important part is going to be how much Florida invests in him, right? We've heard numbers surrounding what Florida would have given LSU had he chosen to come here, right? Any numbers you heard, throw them out the window, okay? Because most likely the numbers that you heard were Lane reliant, right? Because a lot of times the way that things will happen is that they'll go, hey, we want this amount of money from you, or how much are you willing to do? And they'll go, all right, well, this is the number. If it's Lane Kiffin. If it's not Lane Kiffin, it's going to be less. Or they'll say like, hey, we're looking for money. We got Lane Kiffin is who we're targeting. What would you give? And there's that. And so I'll tell you what, Andres, you asked, I will say something about the numbers with the insider program. How about that? Once we're off here, I'll say something about the numbers there. But I think that when you're hearing about it and talking about it, it's like, oh, well, how much money are you willing to give for this coach, this coach, this coach? And then as you kind of go down your list of which coaches you want, that number usually decreases. And so I think that's important there. Clint Dowdle, Morganic Media. Clint Dowdle has worked with Jimmy Sexton. Clint Dowdle is the guy that I'm told will be number one, or is number one there. So there's that. Yeah, I think that the investment that you get without Lane is going to be smaller. I don't know how much smaller, right? And I also, by the way, I think that's a horrible process. I think that that's a deeply flawed mindset. I understand saying, hey, if it's this coach, I'll give that money because I know what it's going to be. But if it's a lesser coach, I'm going to give less. And it's like, okay, well, then you're asking a lesser coach to do more with less. The expectations aren't really changing, right? You're trying to hire a guy that can win a national championship. That's the goal, at least. But if you're taking resources away, if you're going, hey, he's not as good a coach as Lane Kiffin, so I'm going to give less money, then what you're really saying is, hey, he's not as good a coach as Lane Kiffin, I'm going to make it harder for him. That's how I view it. But here's the thing also. It's not my money. Like it's not my, it's a lot easier for me to sit here and go, why wouldn't you give, XYZ amount of money here? No, I think that it should be more money to like if you say, hey, we're willing to spend, just to make numbers simple, just be like, hey, we're willing to spend we'll say $50 million a year, right? That's how much we're willing to spend between head coach, NIL, and assistant coaches. Like, just say that. And then if you end up getting a head coach that costs, again, just for numbers to be simple, $20 million, then you go, all right, we got $30 million to spend on everything else. Okay. But if you end up getting a head coach for $10 million, it'll go, okay, well, we have $40 million to spend on everything else. I think that's how things should work. I think that I understand saying, hey, if it's this, then I'll give more. I get that. If I get what I want, I'll give more, right? That makes a lot of sense. But practically, I think it's kind of counterproductive to say, if it's not the guy I want, then I'm going to give him less and make things harder for him. Because then we're just going to keep being bad, right? Just going to keep being bad there. And look, I don't know what Florida's going to do. If it's Jon Sumrall, the reports have been that Jon Sumrall is going to announce his decision on Sunday morning. So if it's Jon Sumrall, we'll know by then. I do think that Florida will be very quick with this process and making that hire quickly. I think the most likely options are Jon Sumrall or Jedd Fisch. I think Jon Sumrall is a public option. I think Jedd Fisch might be one that they're leaning more into, which, again, I'm not a huge fan of. I think I could talk myself into him, especially because, fun offense at least. But I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting. I think a lot of people got their hopes up for Lane Kiffin, and if it's not Lane Kiffin, then they're going to be upset no matter who it is. Personally, I'm a Florida Gators fan. I've been a Florida Gators fan for longer than I can remember. And I will be rooting for the head coach, whoever it is. I will be different levels of skeptical and different levels of confident, but I will be rooting for whoever the next head coach is. Vegas guy said, Brandon, with Lane out, who's your top choice now? Based on the names that we've heard floated, Jon Sumrall is a good name for me. I don't think Brent Key's coming. I think there's a bunch of guys that aren't coming. But yeah, I think Jon Sumrall is probably the best name that's been listed there. And I know that there's a lot of people who dislike him. I get that. I don't dislike him as much. I think he's a really good football coach. I just think there's a lot more risk involved when you go with a defensive-minded head coach. And that's always been my take. I've been very open about that. I think that when you have a defensive-minded head coach, it's really, really, really dependent on having a good offensive staff. And we'll see what that looks like with Sumrall, right? If it's Sumrall. Again, personally, I think that Jedd Fisch is more likely at this point. I will not be giving any more money to Kelsey. I'll tell you that much. But that just is what it is, right? We'll see what it is. But yeah, Florida, look, again, I know that it feels really crappy to be in this situation. I don't think it's like an impossible situation there. but we'll see what Florida's going to do there. I'll be excited, right? We will be going live tomorrow after the Florida football game. And maybe Sunday, and we'll be talking about a lot of things over the next few days and few weeks, and we'll break down some of what broke down with this team, or this coaching search and this hire. But this is just the reality of the situation, right? That is what it is. We've had over 330 of you in here for this entire time. That's incredible considering we've been live for an hour. But I again, like, I will reiterate this one more time, and then I'm not going to really talk about it much after this live show, because I don't think that there's a point in beating a dead horse. I will again say, for the 338 of you that are presently in here, for anybody that feels as though for anybody that feels as though they were lied to here, or led astray, that was never the intention. I was either lied to, led astray, or speaking to people that weren't as in tune with things as they thought. And that sucks, right? This was always going to be, Florida's either going to come out of this looking with the biggest "I told you so" of all time, or they're going to come out of this looking like idiots. And this time the university decided to drag the media down with them. I don't know what Lane's going to do. I will continue to say that 2025 has been the most productive year we've ever had. These past couple of months have been the most productive stretch we've ever had. And I thank every single one of you for supporting. I know that next week I'll be talking about this as well, because the end of the football season, I always get like that. Just once things wrap up, and it's this is a long, hard season, right? And so I thank every single one of you for ever supporting, joining, whether you're trolling, whatever it is that you're doing. Thank every single one of you for tuning in. It is not lost on me that I get paid to do this, and I get paid to talk about my favorite sports team. Like, it's not just like, oh yeah, I'm a Florida fan. Like, this is easily my favorite sports team. Is just anything Florida. And so I thank you all for tuning in and supporting, and I appreciate that more than you will ever know. And I see you guys popping off in the chat. I hope it's nice things. I'm not going to read them. I'm going to let you know that right now. I'm not going to read it till we're after this. But thank you all so much for tuning in, and I will see you all at the absolute latest tomorrow after the Florida Gators play the Florida State Seminoles. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, review, do whatever it is you need to do. We are available daily and free, whether it's in the podcast and on YouTube. And as always, I will see you all next time.